Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on using digital marketing analytics to drive ROI, how the pros use insights to drive clicks, calls, and customers. My name is Blair Symes, and I'm the Director of Content Marketing here at DialogTech. Before we get started today, I did want to go over a couple housekeeping items with you. First, if you have any questions for the speakers or on the topic during the webinar, please enter them via chat in the bottom left of your screen. Time permitting, we're going to try to answer as many of those questions as we can. Also, if you want to watch this webinar again or share it with a colleague, you will be getting an email with the recording link where you can come back in and access the recording of the webinar. Usually we email that to you within 24 hours of the webinar. So look out for that. As I said, my name is Blair Symes. I'm the Director of Content Marketing at DialogTech. If this is your first webinar with us, you're not familiar with DialogTech, our call tracking platform provides actionable marketing analytics for businesses that value inbound phone calls. So I'm really excited that joining me today are three special guests. First, from TapClicks, we have Noah Jacobson, who's the VP of Development. And also joining him is Zach Jarvinen, who's the Director of Product Marketing at TapClicks. And if you're not familiar with TapClicks, they're the global leader in marketing reporting for digital agencies, media companies, brands, franchises. So Noah and Zach have a ton of expertise they're going to share with us today on omnichannel reporting best practices. So Noah, Zach, it's great for you to have you guys joining us today.
Thanks, Blair. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, great to be here, guys. Looking forward to this, and I think in addition, we're also practitioners. We're users. We have a dashboard, but I've been using dashboards for many years, so I can identify with some of the folks on the call.
So last but certainly not least is David Diebold, who is the Director of Product Strategy at RevLocal. And RevLocal is a leader in personalized digital marketing, helping clients maximize their online presence to generate repeat customers and attract new business. So David, thank you so much for joining us today and lending us your real-world expertise.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
You can see the agenda below. I'm going to begin by covering some statistics and setting the stage for what the omnichannel customer journey looks like today and the complexities and challenges that it poses for marketers. Then Zach and Noah are going to show us some marketing analytics best practices, and David will provide some of his real-world expertise as one of the leading agencies using these techniques to drive value for customers. And again, there'll be a Q&A, time permitting, at the end. So please, as we go, feel free to enter any questions you have in the chat button. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be talking today about omnichannel marketing, and really I'm going to start showing you some stats around the new customer journey and why it's making marketing analytics so difficult, and also the potential benefits if you're able to really do it right. So when we talk about omnichannel, the first thing I like to show is this pretty eye-opening statistic on device ownership. So around the world globally, on average, people own 3.64 devices. So we're talking about smartphones, desktops, laptops, smartwatches, tablets. All of those devices, people own multiple devices, and you can see how that breaks out by gender and by income. But what's amazing is that stat at the bottom is that 90% of people say they use multiple screens for everyday activities, so such as booking a hotel or shopping for electronics. So as marketers, we're trying to better target and optimize our campaigns for shoppers. You really have to start thinking about the multi-device shopping experience that people do today. And also think about how smartphones are really the hub of this multi-device purchasing path or customer journey. You can see some stats on the left from Google. Over half of all global website traffic today comes from people on their smartphones or on their tablets. So, people's activities really have gone mobile, their shopping activities. You can see in the middle some of the major digital channels that marketers invest in, and how people are engaging with these channels primarily on their smartphones and mobile devices. So over half of all searches are mobile. 71% of digital media time, so that's time spent engaging with digital media, is 71% is mobile, which has a big impact on your display ad campaigns. Facebook has always been a tremendously mobile platform. 87% of people access Facebook on their mobile devices, and over half of all people only ever access them on mobile. And then email, there's varying studies, but usually people agree between half to 70% of all emails are now read on a mobile device. And you can see on the right stats from Google on the impact this is having on smartphones, on shopping. So 64% of omnichannel shoppers are saying they're going to do more research on their smartphones. So smartphones are becoming the initial hub for researching purchases. And what's a great stat in the middle, 61% expect to use their smartphones more in store. So this is really an eye-opening statistic for retailers about how people are doing research for purchases in store on their smartphones. But the final stat is really interesting, and that's that 40% of smartphone users, who research purchases on their smartphones or mobile devices, go on to purchase on a desktop. That is that cross-device customer journey that we're trying to go into today. So let's look at how marketing is reacting to this. So we can see how, today in 2017, 40% of all media spend in the U.S. is digital, and that number is going to grow. So by 2020, we're looking at nearly half of all media ad spend is digital. So really, marketing is going digital. And when you talk about digital, you're talking about the three major ad spend channels: display and social and search. But most of us, or many of us, might think, well, search dominates. But display and social, people actually are investing more in the U.S. on those channels for ad campaigns than they are on search ads. And you can see how those numbers break out across the different platforms. Facebook and Google and AdWords, they do dominate the space, but there's also growing investments in other channels. So again, this lends itself to the picture we're painting of a multi-channel, omni-channel digital advertising experience. And also the fact that digital advertising is going mobile. So 2 slides ago, I showed you all those stats around smartphone activity and mobile device activity. Well, marketers have responded by increasingly investing their digital advertising campaigns to target smartphone and mobile device users. You can see the huge growth curve, not just the increase on the left in overall digital ad spend in the U.S., but the increase in percentage of that spend targeting mobile devices. It's really impressive. And on the right, you can see some of the major channels that we talked about: search, Facebook, display, and how today those numbers are predominantly mobile, that marketers are investing their digital ad spend to target mobile devices and smartphones. So there's a lot of power and possibility in multi-channel marketing, but there's also some challenges. So multi-channel actually does work. There are studies that show that campaigns integrating 4 or more digital channels do better than campaigns with just 1 or 2 channels by over 300%. And marketers know it. I mean, on surveys, marketers do understand that 2 or more media channels, they're using 2 or more media channels, most of them are. And then the challenge that comes with this, and what we're going to be helping to show you how to overcome that today, is the idea that over 90% of marketers, while using multi-channel marketing tactics, say that they struggle to seamlessly connect more than 3 channels on the buyer journey. So, David, at RevLocal, you've seen some of these stats. Does this bear out to what you're seeing with your campaigns?
Yes, absolutely. What we've seen from our side of things is that as we've added more channels to an integrated marketing strategy, the better the results were that we got for our clients. So it's definitely something that we've been keyed in on and seen a lot of success. But as we're going to talk about, the struggle is finding ways to measure that success across channels.
Exactly right. So I think this is one of those wrinkles of why it has become difficult for marketers to measure success across channels. And this is from Google, but it's the idea that consumers connect with brands today in whatever way is most convenient to them. So yes, they do go online and they do convert online from digital channels, but they also stop by a store, or they scroll through a mobile app, or they do call a business to talk and engage in conversation with the real person. And as marketers, each of these are very valuable touch points that you need to be able to attribute and analyze back to your marketing in order to measure and optimize performance, something that Zach and Noah are going to talk a little bit about in a minute. But I think this idea of the multiple touch points, the way people convert, nothing really encapsulates this more than the local customer journey, especially when it comes from moving from online, your digital advertising, to converting offline. And you can see some of the stats from Google on the right. When people use mobile search, for example, to help make a purchasing decision, they're 57% more likely to visit a store. And they're also 40% more likely to make a phone call. So again, it complicates as marketers. It's great news that people will be engaging with your digital channels offline because they're 50% more likely to make a purchase. So those are valuable engagements. However, they're also it's a very difficult conversion, or can be, for marketers to track and optimize. So that's part of what we're going to be covering here today. So I touched on phone calls, but at DialogTech, that's our bread and butter. I want to show you some statistics about the growth of phone calls as conversions, specifically from digital marketing. So you can see on the left, paid search. Last year, paid search advertising in the United States drove over 40 billion phone calls to businesses. Social ads drove 12 billion phone calls to U.S. businesses. And display ads drove 28 billion phone calls to U.S. businesses. So people really are engaging with digital advertising and converting by calling. And you can see the growth on the right, how these numbers from 2014 to 2019, there's been a huge jump in phone call conversions from digital marketing. And one of the reasons, of course, is the statistics I showed earlier about how as more and more marketers invest their digital advertising in mobile to target smartphones and mobile devices, it's a natural reaction to see that more people will engage by choosing to call a business. And that's because of click-to-call. It's just much more easy if you're running a search or browsing a website, a business's website on your smartphone, and you want to engage with that business. It's much easier to click on a click-to-call button than it is to try to fill out a web form, wait around, and hope that that business is able to call you back in a timely fashion. So, it makes sense that calls are on the rise as mobile advertising is on the rise. But, that's also true that even without mobile, there are certain industries, and they're some of the biggest advertisers in the world. These are industries that care about phone calls. So if you think about why it is that you would call a business as opposed to finishing a purchase online, usually it's because you're buying something that's either expensive, or it's a complicated purchase, or it's something that you don't buy every day. So for example, automotive. People are not buying cars over the phone, but a phone call plays an important part in the customer journey. When people research vehicles, they usually want to call the dealership to ask questions and set up a test drive. Same thing, for insurance and financial services, a huge part of that is you're going to want to talk to your insurance company in order to finalize a purchase. Over 75% of insurance shoppers will call a local agent or a contact center. And you can see all the rest. I like to say the example on the right of senior care. If you're looking to get, commit a loved one to a senior care facility or try to get help for them in home, you're not going to drop grandma into a shopping cart. You're going to want to call and have a conversation with somebody before you make a decision. So again, another reason why we're seeing all of these phone calls and why phone calls are really an important part of the digital advertising ecosystem for you to measure and optimize. Just two more slides before I hand it off to the guys at TapClicks. But phone calls do convert at a higher rate than web leads. This makes sense for many businesses where a phone call is a live lead. It's something that your salespeople can work right away, as opposed to a web form where hopefully they'll get to it quickly. They'll be able to get the person back on the phone right away, and hopefully that person hasn't submitted a bunch of other web form requests at other companies, competitors of yours. So phone calls, while on the rise, is really great news for marketers, as long as you're able to get proper tracking around that. So if you're not able to track calls back to your marketing, you can see some of the pain points that our customers express when they come work with us is that if they're not able to get credit intelligence for up to half of their conversions if they're missing out on phone calls. Now, if you're in charge of your website, that might look like someone who's coming to your site and calling you. If you're not able to track that call, it might look like it's a bounce. So it might look like the keyword you're bidding on or the Facebook ad you're spending money on is driving poor quality visits to your site when in fact they're some of the highest quality. And it might lead you to misallocate budget. So you might end up spending money on channels, ads, or keywords that are underperforming maybe because you don't have that insight into the very important phone call conversion path that people are taking. And at the end of the day, you can't prove your ROI or the impact of your marketing on the business. And whether you're an agency working with clients or if you're a business yourself doing your own marketing, the name of the game for marketers these days is being able to prove ROI and optimize ROI, and you need data and metrics to be able to do that. So just really quickly, I know not all of you are familiar with how to track calls, but very quickly, if you're looking to track calls, you can do that with a call tracking solution. You might have heard it by other names like call tracking, call attribution, call analytics, call intelligence. There are a bunch of different names for the same technology, but what it does is it provides actionable marketing analytics for businesses so they can take the same kind of data-driven approach to measuring and optimizing calls as they do clicks. So with that set up, I'm happy to hand it off to Noah and Zach at TapClicks to really dig into the best practices for how to report on and tell your multi-channel marketing story. Guys?
Awesome. Well, thanks, Blair. I think just listening to Blair and as he walks through those slides, I think it's very evident that that omni-channel process, that ability to market cross-platform, cross-channel, and drive those, at the end of the day, what you're really trying to do as a marketer is drive leads and drive sales, is evident of how many platforms and channels there are that you need to leverage in order to bring this together. And what that means is leveraging platforms. And in the traditional sense, we knew of, kind of back in the day and still today very successful is, newspaper and TV, cable. And as we've seen over the last 20 years, a growth in that digital has not only grown the options, but also the platforms in which you can market. So you saw a growth in search, and you slowly saw an evolution into display. And then you've seen a blast off of social. And each one of these different channels means additional data sets and information that needs to be taken in and understand success to then be able to get to that ultimate goal of proving out the ROI and the most successful methods of marketing. And so with that evolution of channels, you've seen an evolution of platforms. And just 10 years ago, Zach, we've got studies saying that there are close to 300, 500 different platforms that were out in the market. And the latest count is somewhere in the 4,500 different platforms out there. Obviously, not everybody's using every platform, but that is an incredible amount of platforms that are leveraging and allowing people to access these different channels. And so what that means as far as how do you bring all that information together? And we talk about, everybody at the end of the day talks about reporting, and what does reporting mean? Really, at TapClicks, what we talk about reporting, and reporting can be kind of a boring subject, unless you flip it on its head and you really talk about what are you trying to achieve. You're trying to tell a better story with that data. And to tell a better story and to tell an omni-channel story and really make sense of all this data, you truly need a way to be able to pull this together. So whether you adopt a platform or whether you leverage some of the other standard tools, Excel, or ways that people are bringing data together to tell that story, there are some key components, there are some best practices that we'll share with you today that we think make that better and ways that you need to think about this. So we talked about it. Now you're talking about the number of platforms. And on average, what we're seeing, we work a lot with agencies and a lot with big brands. And on average with our customers, we're seeing them deploy anywhere from 8 to 25 different platforms to access all these channels. So that's 8 to 25 different products, all of them doing a fairly good job in their own domain, their own space of providing metrics and data that you can use to understand the value. But the problem for a marketer and an agency in particular, when they have to scale this by clients, is how do you bring all that information together? And the reality is that just causes a ton of stress, because we all know that doing all these things is just that, doing things, unless you can quantify it and you can justify it and validate it. And so what that's led to is a ton of stress around making sure not only do you pick the right platforms, but how do you then validate that through telling the best story? We're seeing in medium-sized agencies alone, they're spending time, energy, resources, not in doing what they should be doing, which is analysis and better deployment of marketing tactics and platforms, but really just grinding out manual reporting and aggregation of data, bringing it together just so they can create some form of a report. And in some agencies, $200,000 a year, that's a substantial amount of money that's not going towards better performing campaigns. What does that mean if you don't do it, right? So doing it costs money. Not doing it is going to mean you can't demonstrate that ROI. For a marketer, that just means you can't validate your value as a marketer and what you're doing for your organization. From an agency perspective, they can't demonstrate what they've delivered to their clients. At the end of the day, that story that they deliver is their product. And so they need to be able to deliver a true and demonstrate that return on investment. And so without that ability to bring it all together, we're seeing 81% of marketers have that lack an ability to do that. And that's pure based on just overwhelmed with data and the platforms in which to do it and how to get that data. And if you don't do it, you then can't take action. So everything about bringing and telling a story is about then what insights can you get from that information and take an action on that. And we're seeing that just your inability to bring the data together means you're losing out on your ability to take action and therefore increase performance and ultimately do what we're all trying to do, is focus in on what works and get rid of what doesn't work. Which leads us to those best practices of omnichannel reporting. How do you bring it all together? So we have 5 key components, key best practices that we really look at to help you do this. Again, whether you work with TapClicks or whether you're doing this on your own or through some other tool, BI tool or platforms that are out there, the first step is really the aggregation of that data. How do you bring all that data into a single source of truth? That needs to be done easily, quickly, and be done by you and not by a large group of engineers. Number 2, even if you bring that data together, you need to understand your consumer journey to really make sure that you're actually focusing in on the metrics that matter, that demonstrate that customer journey and justify and help you prove that ROI. 3, once you actually understand that journey, you've got the data in front of you, now you need to really focus on what are those key performance indicators that you're looking for. And when we look at omnichannel, how do you bring those key performing indicators by platform together in a way that can tell a holistic story? 4, visualization. If you can't see it, you can't make sense of it. And therefore, you need an ability, a quick way to actually take data, take numbers, and turn them into something that makes sense for your everyday viewer of that information. And then 5 is, okay, now that you've gathered it, you've visualized it, you tell a story that matches the goals and objectives that you've set. you need to be able to share that and distribute that with the constituents or your clients, the people that really need to see this information, and make decisions based on that. So that first step, all about collecting, aggregating data. Now, all this data from all these different platforms is out in their individual products. You need to pull that down via reports. You need to pull it down via Excel files, however they give you access to that. Before, you kind of had this mishmash of bringing it together. Really what you're looking for is a way to pull all this data together quickly and easily. We know, and there's been an evolution in the past 5 to 10 years around how do we normalize that process, APIs and different ways of delivering data being the way. But you're looking for a single platform that can bring all that data together for you, no matter how that data is actually delivered via that third-party platform. And so at TapClicks, we really look at how do we simplify that for a marketer and not focus on really having to be an engineer or a data scientist to bring it together. You need a simple way. And once you bring that data together, it's not just about that high-level, campaign-level data, but you've got to really think about all of the information you need to bring together. And so in a lot of these platforms, you look at search, you look at display, with the growth of programmatic, you're really looking at an explosion of data. You've gone from campaign-level metrics, clicks, impressions, CTRs, which used to be the measurement, to truly getting down to the geo keyword level data sets. And that's a lot of data. So you need a way to bring together not only just a lot of different platforms, but all of the different data sets they offer to then tell that story. And once you get that data there, it's all about really understanding that customer journey. So Blair talked a lot about how, online to offline on the call side of things and using that. You really need to understand who is your target audience and how are they engaging with you or engaging with your different campaigns. And we know that can go both directions, online to offline, offline to online. Truly understand what that means and the platforms that you are leveraging throughout that entire journey. So if it's initial engagement where you're trying to get as much reach around branding, search, display, ways of leveraging those platforms, all the way down to the bottom of that funnel where you're really trying to capture those leads, you need to understand what platforms you're using in those different parts of the funnel, as well as what are the metrics that start to tell that story and that journey and demonstrate that through data. And that really gets to those KPIs. So when we're looking at, and we talked about 12 different, 8 to 25 different platforms that maybe a marketer is using for an agency, upwards of 20 different platforms. Telling a omni-channel story doesn't mean just bringing together metrics from all the various platforms you're using and putting it on a page. It means looking at like metrics, common platforms, and being able to bring those data sets together to tell a holistic story. So you're out there, you're using search, and you're using Bing and AdWords. Reporting on data by platform, while valuable, doesn't tell the same story as being able to report on the overall success of your search campaigns. Or for that matter, your PPC or your pay-per-click campaigns when you add in Facebook or other social channels. So you need the tools and the easy-to-use tools to bring data together. At TapClicks, we refer to that kind of as categorization of data. That's really creating channels of platforms and your ability to bring those together. You need an easy way to make sure that the right data sets are combined together so you can tell that true omni-channel story. Once you bring data sets together, that obviously means that you then have additional metrics that would play off of those different data sets. And that means you need tools that can actually generate those types of metrics because you're not able to pull those down from a third-party platform, but you need to be able to build that yourself. And so you need to do things like calculations where you can really do CTR cross-platform if you were to join, let's say, all of your search and all of your paid advertising channels together. In the agency world, really the ability for them to demonstrate true return on investment really gets to the overall cost and investment that the advertiser has made, and not necessarily the cost of the agency themselves. And so that means being able to truly apply real markup margins to those metrics so that the actual ROI is properly demonstrated and the real story is told. And then the fourth item that we focus on here is really making sure that that story that you're telling is representative of your audience. And so you need a platform or a methodology to make sure that the story that you tell is not the same to every single constituent or user that you're sharing this information with. You need a way of making sure that, at a high level, that you can demonstrate the overall basic KPIs or key performance indicators. And then for those users who are asking for more information and want more deeper access to analytics and insights from that, they may be shared much more information. And so obviously that story that you're going to tell, that data sets that you want to share, needs to be configurable. And as a whole, when you look at this whole thing, it has to be scalable. And so if you're looking at an individual marketer, you're looking at various campaigns they're running, anywhere from 5 to, say, 500 campaigns a month. And if you look at agencies, you're looking at anywhere from an agency of 5 clients all the way up to those larger media companies with 10 to 20,000 advertisers. And all of this has to be done in a way that they can scale that to match the number of campaigns you're doing and tell a proper story to each of those different advertisers. Once we've brought that data together, once we've really truly understood that customer journey, the metrics that demonstrate that journey, and we've developed the KPIs, whether it's directly from a platform or we've evolved them yourselves, you need a way to visualize that. And again, this gets to an easy-to-use tool that can pull out the insights and the data in a visual way that not only you can understand it, but those that you need to communicate to truly can understand it as well. And again, truly telling a story really comes down to how do you pull out the right metrics and the right KPIs that demonstrate that, and then how do you visually represent that in a way that anybody can understand that quickly and easily, and therefore take action on it. And the fifth step is really, and maybe the most important, is an easy, scalable way that you can then deliver your message or your results to those you need to share that information with in the format in which they need to receive it. And so for a lot of people, that may be in PowerPoints with a highly visualized representation of that information. But for others, it may be really a matter of wanting to see all of the data and all the metrics that validate those KPIs. And so you need an easy-use tool that can allow you to distribute that information to as many people as possible in the format that they can easily and want to absorb that information. And so with that, let me pass it over to Dave and let him talk a little bit about how RevLocal does this in a way that really scales and how they're able to leverage these different platforms.
Sure, thanks so much. So at RevLocal, we help businesses maximize their online presence with a personalized approach to digital marketing. So as a part of that, we offer a variety of services to local businesses across the country. Some of those services include local search, review marketing, paid advertising, and social content. So with offering all those services, we're in a multitude of channels, so we need ways to be able to track all of our marketing activities and share all of that data, not only internally, but with our clients as well. So some of the platforms that we utilize are DialogTech for call tracking and call recording, and TapClicks for our reporting and analytics. So one of the reasons that we really love DialogTech with their call tracking and recording is it's a real tangible way to capture leads that are specific to RevLocal's efforts. When we talk about some of the different activities that we do, there's all sorts of different data points, metrics, KPIs, what have you, that we can report to clients. And they're all important in their own various ways. But in so many instances, we see that businesses ultimately care about their true ROI, and they need bottom line statistics, such as what kind of sales are you driving. And what we've found is that calls in particular are a great way that are very close to an actual sale. So they're a great way to attribute online activity to offline sales. And in particular, we really love the call recordings. We've, in the past, utilized solutions that had information on the calls that our activities were driving for a small business, but we didn't actually have the call recording, and we've found that actually being able to listen to the phone call makes that data point very real and very tangible for a client so they can really understand the value that's being created. Going along with that, we utilize TapClicks for reporting and analytics. So it's a great way to share all these statistics, including the calls and the call recordings with our clients. So it's a great way to aggregate and store all of this data on all the performance that we're doing. And it provides a very clear way for us to demonstrate that ROI that we're creating for our advertisers. There's all sorts of great things within that dashboard platform. There's charts and different visualizations, some of which we'll share with you, to really tell a story and go through the data. There's the ability to actually, within a platform, to be able to click and actually listen to those phone calls that we're talking about so we can really understand what we're actually creating for a business. It also helps us to be very flexible at scale. At RevLocal, we deal with thousands of clients, so we need a platform that's very flexible and that fits different needs. So we have some clients that want to walk through things themselves. So it's great to have a dashboard that they can log in anytime they want and see real-time statistics. Some people like to have stat in front of them, but they want to be walked through it, so we can do screen shares with them. We can also schedule reports too. Some people just like getting a report in their email and viewing the data that way. So TapClicks provides a great way to show all of that data in these variety of ways at scale, which is very important for us as an agency.
Great. Thanks for that, David. And with that, we wanted to give a little bit of a peek on how some of this works in practice. Encourage folks, of course, as well to type in questions if some have come to mind along the way. But as well, now that you've kind of heard the kind of framework and approach and best practice, some of the best practices, what does that look like if you in the wild or as you get started with that? So, of course, as Noah was saying, really important you have all your data in one place. And so you want to have a dashboard that has direct connections to all your tools, from calls to display, email, search, video, SEO, and so on. You want that single source of truth. So it's important that you have a dashboard that kind of really brings it all together, either via direct integration or have some sort of import mechanism that allows you to pull it in. Even better than that, if that import mechanism can be automatable, right, so that it can daily fetch and bring in your data either through some sort of API technology or through an Excel sheet importer. And so you want a tool that has that.
And going off of that, I feel it's very important to have a tool or a platform that allows you to have access to all these channels. I think of RevLocal when we started, and we typically only used a few marketing channels for any given client. And nowadays, we have a client come in that we're serving, and we might be working with upwards of 20 channels or platforms to help them out with their digital marketing strategy. So it's really important to have support for all these channels. And then you want to look for a platform that can grow with you. I think of not only of RevLocal's evolution, but the evolution of the industry as a whole. And we look at this, I love this visualization of all these different channels supported, and if we probably took some notes here, I would wager that several of these didn't even exist a few years ago. So it's important to build in flexibility where you can add channels that maybe you're not utilizing as an agency or an advertiser right now, or maybe it's channels that don't even exist, but you want to plan for that for the future.
Yeah, and I have a little saying I always say to that, which is if you can't report it, then you can't sell it. So whether that selling it means you sell it to your clients or as an agency, or you need to sell it internally as a valid channel, or if you can't report on it, you can't sell it.
Great point. And then, yeah, really great points, right? And then once you've connected that, so it should be, as Noah's describing, really easy plug and play. And could input credentials or something like that, and then the data really should just start flowing in. So your call tracking data alongside your other marketing data to really get to that omni-channel. The best dashboards, are made to work out of the box, right? They have some views, kind of pre-configured views with pre-configured best metrics top, so you can kind of immediately see and scroll through all of your platforms, all your tools, what's performing and what's not, maybe have some scoring there or something like that. However, in addition to having some pre-configured views, the best tools will also allow you to configure or turn on or turn off certain data metrics that are important to you, right? You want to identify those KPIs, which can change based on what you're, as an organization or as an agency or as your end client has requested, what's best for you or what you like to look at, right? If you're an ad ops person, you may want to look at certain things. If you're an executive, other things. And so you want to be able to both have some pre-built views as well as configure it.
Yeah, David, could you talk a little bit about some of that the ability to not just look at telling a story by, in your case, clients or campaigns, but also some of those internal benefits of finding a platform that allows you to roll up and look at things by segment and the value you can get from that?
Absolutely. There's a lot of great ways that we take advantage of the platform here. One of them, as you said, is being able to roll up that data. So I think the bigger point is every business can have different needs. So we have some businesses that want to see all of the data, so we can build views that's just very detail-oriented. We have some clients that just want to see the bigger picture, and that's the story that we want to tell to them, so we can just single out just some very top-level metrics for them, and we can build out reports and dashboards that just show that. And then the roll-up reporting is key as well, where you can work with brand networks or enterprise-type clients where maybe it's a grouping of stores and you want to be able to, in one view, let's just take a big level picture of how these 30 stores are looking in this region, and then if I want, I can drill down into sub-regions or even individual stores. So there's great flexibility there where we can build out different views and different reports depending on the actual audience for that data.
Great. And with that, actually, we wanted to pass it to Blair to talk a little bit about some of those best practices for call tracking specifically that you'd want to visualize based off of.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Basically, I'll do this quickly, but I did want to share at least some of the data points that DialogTech customers and other industry experts do look at when it comes to tracking phone calls and how to use that to optimize your marketing ROI and drive more customers. So when I talk about it, I try to put it into 4 distinct buckets. So the first is what marketing interaction drove each call. So being able to tell for every call the marketing channel, if it came from search or Facebook or display or email or even offline direct mail campaigns, being able to tell what channel the call came from. And then the specific ad or program within that channel. So which Bing ad or AdWords ad or which Facebook ad variation specifically drove somebody to give you a call. If it's a paid search ad, for example, what is the search keyword? So as you're doing AdWords, Bing, paid search optimizations, knowing which keywords are actually driving calls. And then, of course, if somebody actually goes to your website first, before calling, so they come from any kind of ad campaign that drives them to a landing page. They scroll through your website and they call you. Being able to capture all that data around the website experience from the page they landed on, the page that drove the call, in order to understand what's driving calls and what website experiences are driving calls. Information on the caller. So if you think about all the great ways you can optimize ad targeting or keyword bidding today, having information on what's driving calls can help you with that. So for example, if you know that someone is more likely to call you from downtown Chicago from a certain keyword search at a certain time of day. So someone's at lunch, they're searching for vacations or cruises during their lunch break. You want to make sure your paid search ad is front and center during that time. So you can actually improve your ad bidding if you know that people are likely to call you during a certain time or from a certain geography. What happened on the call? So David talked about a little bit with call recordings, but being able to capture the actual what happens to the calls. So if you're sending calls to different business locations, whether you're an agency or you're a big company with multiple locations, knowing that you're sending X amount of calls from a certain channel to a certain location. And as marketers, the second bullet I can't stress enough is knowing if the call was actually answered. If you're spending a ton of money for a client or for your own business in paid search, for example, or Facebook or display or whatever it is to drive calls, you've got to make sure that that call is getting answered. Because if it's not getting answered, you're not going to get any ROI out of it. So as marketers, being able to know that the call was actually answered is a huge data point. What exactly was said, David touched on the call recordings. Just having insight into the actual conversations can help you optimize your messaging, your keywords by knowing which ones people are actually using, or knowing if your sales team is actually saying the right promotions or they're on brand. Having access to that can have a great impact on your ROI. And lastly, the quality of the lead. So as marketers, our goal isn't to drive calls. Our goal is to drive customers or appointments or revenue, depending on what your business model is. Being able to have all that data from 1, 2, and 3 and tie it into, was it a quality sales lead? Did the call convert? So when you're doing optimizations on paid search or Facebook or Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is, you're able to say, okay, this specific keyword or ad campaign didn't just drive this many calls, but it drove this many customers. And you can make really interesting optimization techniques or ad targeting strategy enhancements to really improve your ROI. So I hope that helped a little bit. I'm going to hand it back over to Zach and Noah to show a little bit of the visualizations about what some of this data could look like for you.
Yeah, so totally. So how do you visualize that, right? Blair just laid out a lot of really great metrics and things you want to measure and manage with your call tracking. How do you visualize that so you can really see that it comes to life? It's really apparent when something's amiss and you need to take action on it. So, of course, on the calls to answered side, a funnel, great way to do it. You can see very clearly there how many calls you have, how many of those you're answering. You can maybe move to address. Then drilling deeper on the bottom left, what is causing these calls not being answered, right? Is it because they're busy? Is it because they were abandoned or just unanswered in the first place? And then as a business, you can start to think about, okay, why is that? Is it because I don't have enough phone lines, right? Or I'm not routing them correctly, right? Okay, I should add that. I should address that. Or because I don't have someone manning them or they're not trained to man them correctly, right? I should address that. Calls are so important to me. I need to address that, right? And so that's these. By visualizing these things, you can see that, you can capture that ahead of time, and you can correct that. It can be huge. I've seen technical glitches, right? There's some technical thing or the wrong phone number is listed, and all of a sudden you're losing on all these opportunities, and it's just because something like that happened and you didn't have a good mechanism to see that via visualization or even an alert and things like that. So really important. Finally, I think the other great thing that Blair mentioned is the breakdown. What's driving those calls by ad source, by campaign, what have you. Build a little pie chart, right, that shows this one's doing this one's doing that, and then you can optimize based off of that. Man, this one's doing this, contributing a lot of calls at a great rate. Let's keep expanding that in the pie. Or you know what, I think this other one should be doing better. It's just a sliver. I should make it bigger, and so adjust your campaigns to make that work.
And at the end of the day, I mean, really, you want a place to demonstrate when it comes to hard leads, call tracking being one of those types of hard leads. Maybe you're doing form fills. Really, maybe you're doing on your e-commerce, on your sales side. You need a way of capturing that and bringing that together based on everything that's driven that through that funnel. And if you're really wanting to have a single place to get high-level attribution or better understand what types of leads are being generated based on what types of source, you really need a centralized place to bring that in. So a lot of people use CRMs. That's great in a lot of ways. You have to actually do a lot of integrations into there to make sure that the leads actually get sent in there. You need to be able to have some pixel tracking and ways of APIs of sending leads to it. So at TapClicks, what we do is we help you bring it from all the different methods that you're capturing those hard leads from and put it into a single environment. So you can see that, you can understand for the type of client, maybe the type of lead that's more effective. In this visualization, you can see here, right, it's very small, but this right represents that most of the leads are coming in via call tracking versus on the left here, much fewer that are coming through on a form fill. So you can start to understand your clients a little bit better and therefore understand that journey and therefore focus your efforts to match their journey.
And for a business, it's so important to have all your leads in one place. It's a great way to see the true value that's being generated by your marketing activities. And in particular, I've said it before, but the call tracking and the call recordings are such a great tangible way to provide that value to show really what's coming of your marketing activities. And as we talked about a little bit, having a CRM Lite, don't underestimate how powerful that is too, because as we said, having a full CRM can have great benefits if you do it the right way, but for some businesses, it can be very cumbersome to operate a full CRM. So you can get a lot of the benefits just by plugging it into a CRM Lite kind of system like this, where you're just looking at your leads and you're tracking them in a very easy way to manage.
Totally agree. Now, stepping back, right? Stepping back from calls and thinking again about that kind of omnichannel. How do you want to report on each of your channels? You want to report on categories. You want to roll up and report on everything, right? So as Noah was saying earlier, it depends on the person. It depends on the view. But just thinking, one thing I do is I set up at least one dashboard, which is my main KPIs for especially if you're a brand or a company, you may have key metrics that you're expecting from your marketing. Maybe it's your leads, your visits to your site, how many people are converting based off of those, and how much you're spending to achieve that. And so a great practice for that is to set those KPIs, make them super apparent right at the top of your dashboard or of a dashboard view. And so you can track that period over period. You can see, hey, is it trending in what direction, and take action. I personally like a balance of those hard leads along with something like conversion rate, because then I can see, that's where there's a big gain in the movement of the needle. If I can up my conversion rate on our site, then there's a lot more to gain. So I try to balance it both with some really hard ones as well as something that's a good indicator of good performance. The next thing that it's good to look at, of course, is the trend over time. So you often show that with a bar or a line chart, right? Of course, if things are trending up, right, you want to double down maybe. You want to say, okay, good, it's reassuring, maybe double down on the things that you're doing. If it's going down, of course you want to correct it. And so it's really nice to have, after your KPIs, those trends up or down, as well as we've talked about a couple of times, that pie that shows the breakout of each source, what's contributing via paid, organic, display, all of those channels. How is it rolling up? What's it doing? And how do you take action on it? Finally, you want to annotate that, right? A great best practice is to make a note of kind of what's going on. You can either do it via text on the page or actually clicking on a graph and adding that annotation. What that does is two things. Well, one, I often do it personally for myself because I want to know, I want to remember, maybe I've forgotten, I haven't looked at it in a while. That's why it went up or went down, and kind of it allows me to describe what's going on. as an agency, or even to your internal team, it allows you to position yourself as an expert, right? If you're an agency, you want to be able to tell, explain things. You want to be the trusted advisor to your end client. Or if you're a big brand, the same thing. You want to be able to explain things to the team. So really great.
And having these in compelling visualizations is so important. Having all this data in spreadsheets, it definitely has its place, and that can be very valuable. But at the same time, you can get really lost in those. And having these nice visualizations where you can break out the really important KPIs can really help you to focus on what's important and to help you tell a story as well.
That's it. Yeah. And you usually go best practices for dashboard design or KPIs at the top, then trends, then the details below. You get to those details, but you want to be able to see that roll up right at the top, what's going on, and then that, if you want to know more, right, if something's down or up, then you can go down the page. A great dashboard kind of passes that test. We call it a 5-second test of looking at a dashboard and being able to pull the metrics. So here we're kind of showing, right, in the past slide we showed that big roll-up view of across all marketing. Here, as kind of Noah was mentioning earlier, you can also break it down via category, right? So here you can have all of your paid search on the left-hand side, impressions, clicks, conversions, and cost of paid search, be it rolled up from AdWords, Bing, or other tools. A funnel, right? How many impressions are you getting, clicks, and then conversions from that. The line or bar to show trend up, trend down over the time, a good health check. And then even better, if you're set goals again here, it's great to set goals. I use a gauge widget for that, or a gauge chart. Whereas for overall, maybe you're looking as a business, leads. Am I hitting X amount of leads a month or whatever it is? On the paid search side, right, you maybe want a different one, right? So you may want CTR, right? Great barometer for good ads. And the reason is usually the person who's looking at that, sometimes it could be the whole organization, or you could pass it around, but you may also want to build this view for that ad ops, for the person who's managing those ads. This gives you a chance, right, to give them their own view. As we're saying, it's important that everyone kind of gets the right amount of information, a roll-up view for the executives, and a drill-down view for those who are managing it. And I think with that, we could probably move to take questions.
Yeah, so thanks, everybody. We're up against the hour, so we'll try to get a couple questions in. I know we're going over on time, but if you want to learn more information about what we covered today, or are interested in some of the technologies we covered, so please visit the TapClicks website to learn more about marketing analytics and request a demo. If you're looking to have a great agency help you drive business, RevLocal will be happy to talk to you as well. And if you're looking into more about the call side, the call attribution and call tracking side, certainly visit the DialogTech website, and we'd be happy to give you a walkthrough of our platform. So with that, we're a little over on time, but I'm going to ask a couple quick questions to our presenters that we've got coming in here. So the first question, David, I'm going to go ahead and send this your way, but what kind of metrics does RevLocal typically focus on for successful multi-channel campaigns?
Sure. Well, it varies from campaign to campaign and what channels you're going to be looking at, but I think some of the big metrics at the end of the day end up being phone calls and form fill-outs are really huge for us as that bottom line number one KPI, just because we think of it as all marketing activities. It's all about turning clicks into customers. So a lot of other metrics that you might look at, depending on the campaign, clicks, impressions, click-through rates, they're all very important, but ultimately they're driving some of those real-world goals for businesses, and oftentimes the best trackable way to see those from a metric standpoint are form fill-outs and especially calls that are tracked and recorded.
So there's a quick question here about offline marketing. I know the topic of this webinar was on digital, and we focused a lot on digital, but one of the attendees wanted to know how to get offline marketing data from offline campaigns into the mix. So at least from the call side, I can answer that really quickly. Using a call tracking technology, you can actually insert trackable phone numbers into your direct mail or your billboards or your television ads. So when somebody calls, you can get that same data. You can know that somebody called directly from those campaigns. I don't know, guys, if there's anything else that you wanted to touch on
Blair,
that part.
I can add to that a little bit, and that's really where with TapClicks we focus on making sure we provide you with methods of getting any type of data into the platform. So if we have a direct connect, usually that's going to happen through a digital source. If you have offline or your own proprietary data, then we set up methodologies for people to be able to import that data into the system. They can even set those up to be scheduled and come in on a regular basis. So that's how you get the data there. Now, how you actually show some of the effects of that offline to online is really, the value of a platform like TapClicks, where it's going to allow you to put metrics that have correlation with each other in the same environment, right? You're going to be able to put tracking like you've done with, say, using DialogTech and be able to show that attribution either directly because you've got a direct and dedicated call tracking number for the offline campaign, or you've got a more of a correlation around attribution by seeing that data. You also use tools that we really focus on, and Zach hit on a bit, was annotations and being able to really go into looking at, say, a spike in your website traffic. You might see a spike, but unless you can annotate that spike and communicate to the viewer why that spike happened, it just looks like a spike. But if you can truly put in there some offline data, maybe you ran a TV spot, maybe you ran a newspaper ad, obviously that is difficult, right? And the market has gotten better, at least in the linear space as far as TV and radio, in being able to have that as a digital targeted audience. But still, you need a way to be able to explain why those spikes happen. And by putting in offline data next to it and then annotating to bring someone's attention and explain that spike is a result of a TV spot that ran on X date at X time, you're really able to communicate and tell the true story behind those data sets.
So I couldn't have said it better myself. We are about 4 minutes over, so I think we're going to have to end the Q&A here. Any questions that didn't get answered, we'll happily follow up with you via email, or just visit one of our websites and give us a call, and we'd be happy to chat then. So I wanted to thank Noah and Zach from TapClicks, and of course David from RevLocal. Great information. I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar and found value in it, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Blair.
Thanks, everyone.